afternoon. Yep. Good afternoon, everyone, and hello from Hanoi, Vietnam.
Okay. Welcome to visiting lecture held by the Law Faculty of Universitas Pancasila. This is a regular event held every semester in our faculty, and today's theme is legal empowerment and access to justice for marginalized communities, a global perspective. Before we proceed, I kindly ask to our guests and participants to comply to these following rules. Please mute your microphone during the discussion, and a question and answer will begin after Mr. Lasky presents the presentation. Any questions on that matter, please write your questions in the chat box, or you can use the raise hand feature. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we would like to ask our Dean, Professor Dr. Edi Pratomo, to deliver his speech and also marks the opening of this lecture. Professor Edi Pratomo, the screen is yours.
A very good afternoon to all of you, especially dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, students, lecturers, and the public participants. I would like, first of all, to express my deep appreciations to all of you, the participants, for having gathered at this very important public lecture, which is initiated by the Faculty of Law, University of Pancasila, within the framework of Independent Campus Competition Program of 2022, initiated by the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Research and Technology. This time, we will have a very prominent person, a prominent guest lecturer. He is Mr. Bruce Lasky, JD LLM. He is one of the young lawyer activists in the field of law enforcement. Especially, he is now active and he has head office in Bangkok, Thailand, who is dealing specifically with the questions of the access to justice for marginalized communities. And marginalized communities are also consisting of vulnerable groups, of very disadvantaged persons who have not yet a full access to the recognitions of guarantees for the implementation of its very basic principles of human rights. It is very important that during this public lecture, we invite a person like Mr. Bruce Lasky, because he has a very specific competencies, especially in the field of the implementations of the very legal principles, fundamental freedoms of human rights as enshrined in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. And this lecture is also consistent with the mandate that has been given by two basic and core instrument human rights, namely the international civil and political rights, the international economic and social cultural rights. It is with great pleasure that I would like to inform also to the audience that Indonesia has been committed to the implementation and the protection of human rights since the very beginning, especially since the amendments of the Fourth Amendment of the 1945 Constitution of Indonesia. It is very much stipulated under the Article 28D, Paragraph 1, that everyone in Indonesia has the equal treatment before the law, and it is very much guaranteed by the constitutions. We would like, therefore, to take this opportunity to give the floor to Mr. Bruce Lasky in order to enhance our understanding, our knowledge, to know comprehensively the principle of human rights. How do we define the vulnerable peoples that are very much vulnerable in their life? We would also like to know how far is the implementation of the international instruments on the basic principle of human rights. The actual implementation of those instruments are very important now, especially in reality, in life, because socializations on the protections and the promotion of human rights sometimes are left behind by many depressing issues like the global economic recovery, the pandemic situations, the energy efficiency, and the climate change. Based on that experience and that background, it is very much timely now to listen very carefully the prominent person who is going to explain to us about how far is the access for the vulnerable and marginalized communities in the implementation of their basic human rights in their life, with the perspective of a global view that is going to be spoken by Mr. Bruce. On behalf of the academic society of the Faculty of Law, University of Pancasila, I would like to express my deep appreciation, gratitude, special thanks to Mr. Bruce Lasky for having the enough time to come online to provide us with the necessary information which is relevant to the challenges and opportunities who are now being experienced by the vulnerable communities and marginalized people around the world. We would also like to know how far is the practice by the other countries, other states and governments in the implementations of the legal empowerment and access to justice for those vulnerable peoples. Without further ado, I would like now to invite Mr. Bruce, and once again thank you on behalf of the Faculty of Law for your presence, for your contributions, and for your support and understanding, especially in the implementation of the Independent Campus Competition Program initiated by the Faculty of Law, University of Pancasila. I thank you once again and good luck. All the best to all of you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Adi, for your deliverance. As been mentioned by our Dean, this lecture aims to give spaciousness to our students' critical thinking, especially in the matter of access for marginalized communities. So in that spirit, today we have Mr. Bruce Lasky as our speaker, whose expertise in line with today's theme. Welcome back to FAUP. Mr. Lasky, if you are aware, this is the second time we're working together. Back in 2021, you are one of our speakers in the International Symposium of Clinical Legal Education. I hope you still remember. Okay, so we are very honored, sir, to have you here again. On his speech, our Dean has defined that Mr. Lasky's competence and expertise will bring us to a further discussion on legal empowerment and access to justice, its concept and its implementation from the global perspective. So without further ado, Mr. Lasky, you have 25 to 30 minutes presentation. The screen is yours, sir.
Wonderful. So thank you, everyone. And as I said before, it's a real honor to be here again. And 2021. Akakaba, everyone. I'm actually currently I'm in Hanoi, Vietnam. And I will share with you that after this meeting, this seminar series with you, I'm about to actually go to one of our long-term university partners, the National Economic University, that has a clinical program with students that have been working to empower communities for a number of years. So it's this seminar series and this presentation fits very, very well in. I'm also going to say this. I know that I've been asked to lecture, but the way I normally do things is I do it in a much more interactive way. I don't want to talk for the next 30 minutes. But I do want to at least start on the theme. We're talking about legal empowerment. So I want to kind of reflect on that. And what does that mean? When we talk about legal empowerment from a global perspective. I'm originally a lawyer from the United States from now more than 30 years. But starting in 1999, I came to Asia and began doing legal and justice empowerment work in the Asia region and globally. And I think this idea of what do we mean by empowerment is really important. So rather than me just explaining what I think empowerment means, and when we talk about legal or community legal empowerment, it would be good. Can everybody, I'm going to ask you to use the chat. I'm going to ask you to use the chat function, okay? So everybody, if you can do me a favor, everybody you put your fingers up like this. If you don't want to turn your cameras on, that's okay. If you can turn your cameras on, I would love to see you. But if I can just ask people here, I'm going to ask you for about 30 seconds in the chat function, to share with me what you consider to be, empowerment. When we're talking about community empowerment and justice empowerment, what it means to you. Because after that, I want to then discuss a few of the examples, and I want these examples to actually connect into students, because we're working with the university here, and I want to be able to provide some models of community empowerment models related to academia, students, universities, and examples that we've been involved in regionally and globally. But to start, I'd like to, if everyone can just, in the chat function, I'm going to count down from 10, okay? I'm going to put up 10 fingers, and then I'm going to ask you, when I get to 1, to just, in the chat function, to put in what you think empowerment means, okay? Everybody good? All right, so I'm going to count down. I'm going to go, and don't worry about your answers. It's not a problem. But in the chat function, I'm going to count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So in the chat function, send to everyone in the chat function what you think empowerment means. So if no, okay, good. Okay, yeah. So listen, I'll be upfront. If you're not going to participate, then I won't do the lecture. It's very clear. I'm going to be very upfront right now. So I want everybody to really be involved in this and to share. So if I can ask, is it okay to ask everyone to now turn on their videos? Can I ask everyone to turn your video on? Great. If you don't turn your video on, we're going to remove you from the seminar. So everybody turn on your video. If you don't turn on your video, you'll be removed. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. This is how we do it. Okay. We're sharing this together. Okay, fantastic. So Michael Connor Gisbin. Okay, thank you. Just can I ask you, and don't worry about giving an answer that's wrong, but Michael, can you just tell us, you know, what you think empowerment is? And we're talking about community empowerment. Michael, to you, what is empowerment? And thank you for being brave. I know you could do this. You're fine. You're fine. Okay. You're strong. You're fine. Share with us what you think empowerment means. Okay. And everyone else, remember, turn your videos on or I'm kicking you out of this seminar. Videos on or I'm kicking you out of this seminar. Videos on or I'm going to kick you. Ah, there we go. Fantastic. All right. Videos on or you're getting kicked out. Okay. Michael, over to you. Tell us what empowerment means.
Empowerment. I agree with Ms. Rina Apriani. It is the process of enabling communities to increase control over their lives.
Yeah. Okay. So so fantastic. Give me a thumbs up, Michael. Give me a thumbs up because I think you did great. Yeah. So you use the word communities, and I think it could be communities. It can go from communities down to individual, but you use the word control and control of their lives and enabling them. Fantastic. Fantastic. Michael, can you pick someone else whose video is on and have them share with us so to add a little bit? So Michael, you now have the power. It's okay. You've got it. Let's pick videos on, everybody. You're fine. You're fine. Don't worry.
I can choose anyone.
Michael, pick someone else's videos on and ask them to share a little bit onto what you said. We said, you know, enabling, you know, communities, you know, to have control lives. Pick someone else.
Okay. Most of them just turn off their video.
I know, but everybody remember, if your video's off, we're going to kick you out of the seminar. So video's on. So just take a look. You just got to pick them and they're fine. You have that power.
Okay.
I'm empowering you, Michael, to do this. Okay. We're going to empower this community in this seminar. Let's do it. Okay. Fantastic.
I would like Alif Yoga to answer.
Okay,
to define the empowerment. Alif Yoga.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Alif, give me a thumbs up before you do. You feel good? You're okay to do this? Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay, sir.
Let's add on to this. Let's add on to this. Fantastic. Okay.
Okay, may I start, sir?
You may start. Yes.
Okay. What my opinion is empowerment is a degree of autonomy and self-determination in people and in community.
Okay, autonomy. Yeah, that's a great word. What is autonomy? Autonomy is a big word. What do we mean by autonomy? That's a great word, and I love it. Autonomy. And then probably in Bahasa Indonesian, there's probably a great way to say it. But what do we mean by autonomy?
Can I answer? Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Autonomy.
Absolutely.
Autonomy is about a person's ability to act on his own or her own value and interests. That's why I thought.
Okay, good. Okay, really good. Okay, so we talked about autonomy and the ability to act. Okay, great. So now, can I see, is it Nadhila? Nadhila? Can you see me? Nadhila, we got your video on there. It's okay? Can you hear us? And Tia, can you hear us? Okay, I'm going to now ask, going back to everyone, why is this important? We're talking about empowerment, but why in related to justice? Why in related to justice is this important? Why? We say this is what empowerment is. Okay, and we talk about empowering communities, they run their lives, but why is it important? Why do we find it to be important? So Mercy, can I get it from you? Mercy, you there? Great. Mercy, we're going to put, okay. Mercy, why is empowerment important? And don't be afraid, you're fine. Just take it on. Why is it important?
Empowerment enables leaders and team members to live their fullest potential and to own their own work. I think that's enough.
Okay, good. Okay, so it enables people, to kind of reach their potential, and when we and yeah, so when we look at this and we look about justice, we think about the need for this, and we think about the need for this globally. We think about the need for this in Indonesia. Right now I'm in Vietnam, and we really work all around the world. Okay, so, and one of the things that I and my organization, Babsicle, we have this name Babsicle, we do, is we work on different type of empowerment programs and ways to empower communities. So we're talking about different models, okay? So Mercy, I want to stay with you. Is it okay? You good? Can I get a thumbs up? All right, Mercy. Now I want you to talk about, okay, so I want to bring it back to students, okay? We're going to bring it back to students. And because when we think about students and students studying law, Mercy, are you a law student?
I'm not.
What are you, Mercy? What are you?
Economy. I'm an economy student.
You're an economy student. Okay, great. You're an economy student. So that's fine. So I want to hear an idea of ways that you feel that students, you're an economy student, and we work with students in many different faculties. What would be a way students can help in their student life to empower communities? What is a way that students can do this? Mercy, over to you, and don't worry about your answer. I'm sure it will be fine.
Pardon, what was the question again?
The question is, how can students work with communities to help to empower them? When we're talking about empowerment, how can students, as part of the work that students do, okay, we're talking about legal empowerment, but legal also connects into economic empowerment. How can students be involved in legally empowering communities? So what would be one example that you can think of, Mercy, where students can be involved in this? Fadhil, do we see you? Fadhil, you want to add to that?
Ini bukan di kelasmu doang itu, lihat aja nanti.
Mercy, do you have an idea? Do you have an idea how students can be involved? Not at all? I mean, students, they sit around and they study and they do nothing to empower communities?
I think when you're in class, you can like share your ideas and set goals and monitoring your environment. I think that's the answer.
Okay, so that's very, very good, Mercy. Okay, so students, when they're studying and as part of the in-class studying, they can do this and they can share their ideas. And Mercy, let me get a thumbs up. That's actually very good. As part of their structure and as part of their learning process in the university, they can do this. That is absolutely a way that can and should be a part of looking to legally empower, where students study this at the university, and this is what they do. Very good, very good. Would anybody like to give a suggestion about what students can do while studying outside of the university? In any way that students, because again, you have your in-class studying, but what about outside of the university? Any examples of that? In Indonesia, are you aware of students going outside the university and actually connecting into communities outside of the university, actually walking off campus and going outside the university and engaging with community. In Indonesia, have any of you heard of any of this happening in Indonesia, where students actually go off campus and engage with communities, or engage with communities even virtually from on campus, but not just in their classroom? Anyone have an example of that?
Sir, may I answer that?
You may, Ali. Thank you.
Yeah. What I know is like today in University of Indonesia, University of Pancasila, they have a project that participate in village development activity.
Great. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so just even like today. Okay. Terrific. Okay. So now what I'm going to now do is I'm going to share with you, and Olive, give me a thumbs up again for that. That's very good. Okay. So I'm going to share with you some models, some student models that have been going on around the world that focus on legal empowerment, including in Indonesia, And one of these models is they're connected to their what we call their clinical legal education programs and models. And we talked about this last year during this the Indonesia CLE gathering that we had. And that's where students actually go and they engage with communities, and they do in different ways. One of the ways is they do legal awareness raising, and students actually work with communities, and they go into communities either physically, or now they do it virtually and physically. And they focus on both the rights and the rights and obligations of communities and individuals. They make them aware of what their legal rights are, and also their remedy, not just their rights, because it's not about just empowering communities and letting them know what their rights are, but they also focus on what their remedies are. And that's really important. And ways that they're able to assert and defend their rights by themselves, and also giving them information as to others that may be able to assist them so they can have that autonomy. And at the same time, also, we talk about their obligations, because it isn't just their individual rights, but there is the idea of obligations. So students have been doing this around the world, including in Indonesia, and especially in Indonesia. We have assisted a number of university programs to assist in what they call the street law community legal education programs. And students, they go into schools, they can go into villages, they can go into prisons, they can go into religious teaching centers, and they engage communities and make them aware of their rights, remedies, and obligations. At the same time, students also have done this. They develop out various materials. So I gave Indonesia as an example where I know that this has been happening. In Laos, where we work, in the country of Laos, which is just north of Indonesia, we've been working with students, and they have been focusing on, and they're doing it today in Laos, in the capital. And students are going out into communities, and they're focusing on the legal aid law, which is new to Laos. And they're going out and they're making people aware of the law, letting you know what the law is, letting them know who's eligible to get legal aid, where to get legal aid, how to get legal aid, why it's important, and the parameters, what legal aid covers. And students are doing that today, and they're going out and they they've worked with us to create materials. They've created posters, they've created handouts. We've done videos where students are showing community videos on this, really as a means to empower communities to say, look, you have these rights to legal aid. And if you're having a problem, this is where you go, this is how you do it. And the students are doing this in communities, and they're also doing this with lawyers, and they're doing this with government. because government is very much a part of legal empowerment. So that is another example, and I'm just giving Lao as an example. In some places, students will go into prisons and they will look to empower people in prisons, letting them know about their rights. One of the core focuses on prison work relates to the issue of pre-trial and people being, so this is a prison community. When we talk about communities and prisoners understanding that they have a right to pretrial release, and students working to make them aware, and at the same time connecting people up to work with communities, to work with them to be able to assert these rights. So these are some examples. These are some examples of students doing this type of work. We said Mercy was talking about being an economics student, studying economics. Well, I can tell you that just in Vietnam now, and I said this evening, we're going to be visiting one of our partners, the National Economic University, and they work with communities to empower communities to register businesses, small businesses, to empower them to register businesses. And that's part of legal empowerment. So it's not just about law, but it's the idea that, people need to work. So, and that is part of economics. But to work, they need to do it correctly. They need to have the documents done. They need to, if they're going to set up businesses, it needs to be done in a proper way so they won't have challenges in the future. So that's another way that we have students doing this, and our partners. So as we said, there's a number of different programs where students actually go into the communities and they work directly with communities. With that, and when we talk about legal empowerment, we also need to talk about the legal needs of communities. And one of the core strategies in trying to identify the legal needs and what areas communities are in need of legal empowerment is to do community assessment and community legal needs assessments. And we have been working with students, and we've done this in different countries, and this is something that students do around the world, where they focus on going out into communities before helping to raise the issue of legal awareness and empowerment. They go into communities to identify community challenges, community needs, community problems, community resources, and they go in and they will put together interview questions where they actually will do surveys and they question community members on their needs. Students then take this information and they go back and they work with their law lecturers and others, and they digest this information, and they then come up with an analysis, an understanding of what may be the community needs, their challenges, and their often, what powers they have in certain communities. And from there, they then look to help work with the communities to build legal empowerment programs. So the identification of legal needs and working with communities to survey them is a really core component. And this is something that students have been doing, and we've been working with students in many different countries to do that. So these are examples, these are models, and it's important because when we talk about legal empowerment, and myself being a lawyer, what I can tell you legal empowerment is not, is having people go into communities. A community has a problem, somebody from the outside comes in, says, okay, here's your problem, I'm going to fix it. And they go in and they fix it, and then they leave. Because when we look around the world, those models are actually the opposite of empowerment. Those models are where somebody comes in, maybe theoretically from above, and says, well, I'm here to fix your problems, blah, blah, blah. It's fixed, I leave. And the problem with that is is that, those problems come right back. They come right back. So going in and fixing the problem is not the way to do it. Going in and working hand in hand with communities to identify the problem and to identify strategies together on how to fix this. If it's a legal problem, if it's an economic problem, if it's a health problem, it's a food problem, doing this together with the community where they are a part of the problem solving, that is a core component of what we call legal empowerment. Because then in doing that, you empower communities to, in the future, fix the problem themselves. And this is often done by going into communities and identifying select persons in the communities. We often call them community paralegals. And you have this in Indonesia, where you have community-based paralegals that live in the community. They're not lawyers. They don't have to be lawyers, but they have a certain level of understanding and of the law and of justice. And these become key persons in communities that we work with. And then they work with other members of their community. So there may be a legal problem. Maybe there's a legal problem related to land issues or water issues or contract issues. And the paralegals work with the individual and community legal members, community members, to work on these legal problems and come up with solutions to help solve these problems. And then in the future, because the paralegals live in the community, if these problems arise again, and they often do, the paralegals are there to work with the communities. So that's a model where we have these community-based paralegals. At the same time, we bring it back to the students. And we could tell you that in so many of the models and the university models that we work with, you have students working with the paralegals together. So the students work with the paralegals together to help explore issues. They can work to train together. The paralegals learn from the students learn from the paralegals. And in the end, this is a huge empowerment process for all. And then going forward, the students themselves, as they do this often as part of their academic program. So when Mercy was saying before, will students study in class? Yes, that is a component of trying to focus on empowerment models. But they don't just study in class. We worked with universities to make this a core and institutionalized part of their academic curriculum, where the students are studying this, they get credit for this, they then work with communities, the communities benefit, but also the students benefit. And then the students go on to graduate. And immediately they graduate and they're there to work with people. But as the students then get older, they become lawyers, they become bankers, they work in government, and then they work in so many other areas. And the students, they themselves have a greater understanding from the time that they were studying. And later in life, they're able to support government initiatives and grassroots initiatives that really lead to community empowerment. So as a vital method of doing this, you've got to connect this into your academic study programs when we look at globally. And this is a really vital and strategic way to empower communities by actually putting it into the academic programs. And this session and this lecture today, this seminar today, is a very good example of that. So what do we have? We have the students themselves. We have the students themselves working with communities. That's the first goal. We then have the students empowering the communities directly, so the communities get empowered, and we can do that through paralegals and others that are in the community. We talk about community assessments and identifying the community needs to ensure that the empowerment that you're looking at doing is actually relevant for them. Then we talked about the development of materials to work with communities, and we talked about there could be videos, and there could be pamphlets, and there could be posters, and there could be other things that could be used to work with communities. That's another important method. And also, when working with communities, we focus on their rights. Number one, their rights. Number two, their remedy. But also number three, their obligations. All right. And then we then say, with all that, we then look at institutionalizing this into education programs. And this has been going on, as many of you know, in Indonesia and around the world. You have your clinical legal education programs and many other programs. So these are some methods related to community legal empowerment. I then want to take you back to one thing that I find to be absolutely essential, because when I think we were talking about the definition of community empowerment, we talked about communities, but we also talked about individuals and autonomy. And Ali, we talked about autonomy before, so thank you. There is something that we work with on the individual level of empowerment. Now, I said I've been a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for more than I've been a lawyer for more than 30 years, and I can tell you that there is a traditional way of lawyers being involved and working with clients, and it really is with the lawyers up here and the clients down here. And the client goes to the lawyer, and they have a legal problem, and the lawyer is there, and they kind of fix the legal problem, and that's it. And that's a traditional way. But we work differently than that. We work on what we call client-centered lawyering. And with client-centered lawyering, the idea is that we look to empower the client if we are lawyers or legal service providers, not just lawyers, where we work alongside them. And as a lawyer myself and the people that I train, we listen to the clients. We make them aware of they give us the facts. We go over the law with them. We understand what their goals. They discuss with us their challenges. And then when we come up with solutions, we do not give the client we don't give the client the solution. We give clients the options. And we can work with them and explain to them what we think maybe is their best option, but we do not make the decision for them. Because in the end, the client has to live with the decision that's made. And the client could be an individual, and the client could be a community. So we will work with them. We put out all the options, but in the end, when we call it client-centered, they are the ones with the power. They're the ones who have to make the decision. And we do this in a way where if, in fact, they have the same problem in the future, we're really hoping they don't need us to assist them, because we've worked with them through the process. So if the problem arises again, they can identify the problem, they can identify the options, and they can identify the various solutions, and they can handle it themselves. If they need to contact us, that's fine. But ultimately, the goal is for them to be able to be on the front lines and doing this themselves. And that can, as we said, that can go into the individual and into the community. And that's often when we work with training in lawyers to work with communities. This is the model. So this is what we call the client-centered lawyering or community-centered model of empowerment and working with them. So these are just some examples that I would say we have that are used throughout the world. Our organization works literally throughout the world with communities, and these are just some basic models of empowerment. And in the end, we know that if communities are empowered, and if they're able to make the decisions for themselves, they will have better access to justice. And better access to justice means better water for them, better health for them, better education for them, and all of the things that communities and individuals need to enrich their lives. Without that empowerment and without that legal empowerment, there's no way to obtain really the other things that communities need. So these are just some basic examples that I've given you, bringing it back to how students are involved, and then students then immediately are involved, and they're involved long into the future. These programs work. Communities around the world, including in Indonesia, are empowered by them. We're very, very proud of these programs that we help to support. And and we believe that more and more support into the future will actually lead to greater access to justice through these models. So with that, I think I'd like to now see if there are questions and answers related to this, or if people would like to share some ideas. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lasky. Participants, now we shift to question and answers. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, or you can write it in the chat box, please. Alif, do you have any question for Mr. Lasky?
Wait, miss. Wait, sir. Sir, may I ask a question?
You
First
may,
of
sure.
all, thank you for the lecturing, and it's about the client-centered lawyering. What if every choice you gave and was chosen by the client gave a bad result at the end? Thank you. Do you have any experience like that?
Yes. It's a great question. So, what happened if, the client's making a choice and there's a bad result at the end? In life, there are bad results. This happens. I can tell you, though, that often if you build the relationship with the client or with the community and they trust you, and you give them full information, and you also give them suggestions, what you think is the strongest and best option, they usually have a pretty good result. I mean, sometimes they're just a bad results. You're not in charge of everything. But generally, clients or communities, if you make good suggestions, they tend to go along with what you think is good. At the same time, I have had in my life, sure, I've had clients where I've suggested that they do A, and they say, I'm absolutely not doing that. And they do B. They don't do A, they do B. And you know what? They get a better result. And I'm like, hey, they were correct. I was the wrong one. They actually got a better result than I thought. So I've seen that happen. And I'm like, great, because, often individuals and communities, they know what is often best for them. But there have been some times where a community or an individual, I've said, look, you got to please do A, please do A, and they'll do B, and B is not such a good result. And, they live with it. I get sad. But at the same time, if I've done my best to try to reasonably explain to them and work with them, and they don't go along with my suggestion, I feel I'm not happy for them, but I feel like I don't beat up on myself. But at the same time, I do reflect on were there ways that maybe I could have been a little bit more convincing, you know? So, but you know, not everybody gets the correct result, and in life, you know, we say that does happen, you know, throughout your life. But yeah, it does happen. But like I've said, it's also happened the other way. I've said, I think A is the best result. They've said no, B, and they're right. And I'm like, you know what? I learn, and I'm constantly learning. And that's another great part of community empowerment. We all learn together. And that's such a great question. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lasky, if I may ask you some questions.
You may.
Okay, I have two questions. The first is, you said earlier that working hand in hand with the community is the core component of legal empowerment, right? The core component of legal empowerment is working hand in hand with the community. Working hand in hand means we need to have a same understanding. So if I am a law student and I want to raise awareness on legal empowerment, so we need to have the same understanding. So to come to this understanding, whether is it a result of the earlier assessment, because you mentioned that before we are working together with the community, we need to make some kind of assessment so we can identify their problems and strategies. Is it working that way? That's my first question. And the second is, in Indonesia, we have a different clinical legal education system. So when you say that to make students more engaged with the community and the legal empowerment, we need to make this as a part of our academic program. Do you have any suggestions, especially for the law faculty of Universitas Pancasila, because clinical legal education is not part of our academic program? Okay, it is derived in any subjects, but it's not institutionalizing in our academic programs. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Okay, and great question. So on the first one, you know, when going to the idea of working hand in hand, you know, students may not fully come to very fully understand what a community is going through, you know, because they're not from the community. So even if we do assessments, you know, you may not fully understand, and that's part of it, to say, look, you know, we work alongside communities, but, you know, ultimately they're going to understand their problems and their challenges maybe much more deeply than a student from outside. So I don't think the goal is to, you know, think that they're going to completely be equal there in understanding it. But at the same time, the students may understand certain things about the law more than the community. So there may not be, but there is this idea of striving towards getting a better understanding. And look, we don't always have to agree on ways and means to do things. And students may work with communities, and they may not always come to agreements, but that's part of the process. But doing these evaluations and these surveys and assessments is a really good way for students and communities to kind of understand what these issues are, better understand them, and to get closer with each other. And some of these, you know, relationships can take years to do. At the same time, part of empowerment is also where, you know, you're not needed to go into the community. Ultimately, you know, community empowerment is what community, we talked about autonomy before. So once you start engaging with communities, you know, if you're really talking about empowerment, you know, often the communities can do things on their own where they don't have to have you be there all the time. Maybe you could be there for something new, but not on older things. So that's, I think, did that answer part of your first question before I go on to your second question about clinical legal education models in Indonesia?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Okay, great. Okay. So then the second thing is about the clinical legal education models in Indonesia. And let me say this, I talk about this all the time. Clinical legal education is, and I use this example all the time, is like a buffet of food. And we love food, we love buffets, and there's so many different ways to do it. And I can tell you that you have universities in Indonesia where it's a core part, the clinical programs are a core part of their curriculum, and we work with universities. So, and that's the beautiful thing about it. Clinical legal education can be a teaching method, and it could be a program. It could be it's a method. It is a method. It's a way to teach, and it's a program. The methods can be used in any class that and it doesn't only have to be in law classes. We help to establish, clinical programs that have been interdisciplinary and that have involved engineering students, the economic students. There are clinical programs that involve medical students that, where they engage with the law also, and many others. So it doesn't only have to be law students, but the methods can be taught and in any type of definitely law courses, where it focuses on the students developing a better knowledge of access to justice issues, better skills, and also values of wanting to help individuals and communities. That's the method. And if you're doing that at Pancasila, that's great. You integrate it into your class, and it's a teaching method, which is great. Then there are the programs, and the programs can be, and eventually the programs should be, or some of the programs should be, accredited programs in the curriculum. And in addition, you could have extra programs that are not in the curriculum, but they're extra activities and programs. And that's great. But you definitely should look to have a program implemented and institutionalized into your curriculum. It takes time. And then once you do that, you'll always have a clinical program. And then if you have extra resources and extra time, you can then have additional programs that are not they're not accredited. Students don't need it. Right now, yesterday I visited a university in Vietnam, and we work with them. They're having their 10-year clinical legal education anniversary this week, 10 years. And they have a core program. This is the Foreign Trade Union University. And their core program, the students, they go into high schools and, they learn law, they learn about working with clients, and the students, as part of their accredited program, they go into the high schools and they do legal awareness raising, legal empowerment in high schools. This is they must go, every student, they have 500 students in the class, they must do it. They must. It's a core part of their program. But in addition, they have other programs that are not credited that students can do. They told me one of the programs is they have some of the students going with lawyers into prisons and working on defense cases, lawyers that focus on people that have been arrested. And they have not 500 students, they said they have 12 students that do this and working with lawyers. So this is an example of an extra program, but it's not credited. So again, for the CLE, you should use the methods, and your program should use the methods. You should work towards having a credited program, but you don't have to stop there. You can have non-credited programs also. But you have to work towards having a credited program. Otherwise, it's always going to be an extra activity. It's never going to be sustainable. And you're not really instilling those core values in your curriculum of showing, that this is really important to educational learning. So I hope that was a long way of answering, but you've come a long way. I came to Indonesia, 15 years ago plus, before they were really, just as we were beginning to do clinical legal education there. And what I've seen in the development in Indonesia has been great. You're a model for many countries on the type of programs. And you have a long way to go, just like every single country has there's no stopping, there's no end road to this, and you keep going. So you should be proud of where you are, and in your university and in your country of where you're able to go. But clinical legal education is definitely a core part of community legal empowerment.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lasky, for the explanations. Is there any other in the audience raising their hand? Some questions?
Sir, may I again?
Okay, Alif.
Yes. I once read a journal that titled "Who is My Client? Client-Centered Lawyering with Multiple Clients" by Julie D. Lawton. And there's something that I picked from the journal. Is it possible to provide client-centered objective advice to client when an attorney has these competing personal duties that threaten to unduly influence the attorney action?
So Alif, say it again. Is it possible to give objective advice if the attorney, and I missed that, the last part of that, I apologize.
Is it possible to provide client-centered objective advice to client when an attorney has these competing personal duties that threaten to unduly influence the attorney action?
That's great. So that's a great question. So I would say no. And often we would call that a conflict of interest that the attorney may have. And in those cases, so one of the things that we talk about when we're focusing on client-centered lawyering is professionalism. It's just like in community empowerment. You can't work with communities if you have an undue influence or some conflict in what their needs and what you think. And if you're working with a client, if you're studying, one of the things is you need to make sure that you don't have a personal conflict with the client. And if you do, then ethically, you should not be working with that client, exactly for the reason because you can't give objective advice. So part of the client-centered lawyering, and even broader than client-centered lawyering, is the idea that lawyers or legal service providers should not be working with individuals or communities where they actually have some sort of conflict or undue influence that shows that they're not able to really work and assist them. I see it happen, but it shouldn't. And honestly, I mean, I have a law license. And if I was to do this again, I could lose my law license or be suspended for doing this. So it's really important. And to identify, what are conflicts of interest. Different ideas, though, are not necessarily conflicts of interest. We all have different ideas. We may, but that does not mean that I can't work with somebody and I'm at conflict. But if I have this undue influence that does not allow me to provide objective advice and ideas, I should not be working with them.
Thank you for your answer, sir.
Thank you, Ali, for the questions. Anyone else? Mr. Lasky is waiting for your questions box. Anyone? Mr. Lasky, I have a question.
Sure.
Do we this movement that we made for this community is bring a good cause for the community? Is there some indicator for that? I make goodness for this community. This legal empowerment is having a result. So what is the indicator of this raising awareness of legal empowerment to the community? Is there a specific graphic or increasing in some aspects of their lives?
Yeah, so I mean, again, that's a great question as far as indicators. So if I go back to the example we gave before, where we're working with communities and making them aware of the legal aid law, we'll go back to Lao where I was giving the example. You know, the students went out and did a survey, an initial survey, like a baseline, and they started out by asking people in the communities, you know, if you needed legal help, do you know where to get it? And they did a baseline, and they came up with somewhere between 24 to 26% of those that were interviewed gave answers that they felt that they knew where to get legal assistance. Okay, so that's a baseline. Now, if the students continue to work with the communities and are doing this legal awareness raising, and we work with the same communities over the next few years, we can reapply the same questionnaire survey to see if there's an uptick in the percentage. So that's one way to do it. Another way is that we can actually have from the legal aid offices in the community, we can, when clients come in and are seeking assistance, they can be asked, you know, how did they find out about the services? And if they say, well, I found out about the services through these legal awareness raising activities, then that's another way to demonstrate that the legal empowerment and the activities and the initiatives are working. But any type of assessment really needs to be over a period of time. It's good to start with some sort of baseline analysis and then see over a period of time, has it improved? And again, it could be in many different, you know, if it's related to education and people, you know, feeling like they have not had access to education, or disabilities. One of the areas we work with are people living with disabilities. You know, you can interview people that are living with disabilities and talking about disability access, and making them aware and others aware that, you know, people living with disability, they have to have access. You go back over a period of time, and if they find that there is greater access, then you could show that, you know, that there's been an advancement, and that people that are living with disability are requesting and, dare I say, demanding access. That is part of the empowerment. So you absolutely can do this, but it takes time. And you know, that's just a reality. But there are a number of instruments out there of ways to track and evaluate this movement, and this, hopefully it's an uptick in increasing this empowerment and access to justice.
To that spirit, I need more questions. Have you experiencing the resistance of the community finally refuse your presence to their community awareness, especially in legal empowerment? Have you experiencing that they, no, we don't need you, go away, we can solve our problems, we can make our voice heard by ourselves, we are able to exercise our own rights without your presence, without this some kind of legal empowerment movement or access to justice to empowerment. Some things, have you experienced that, Mr. Lasky?
Yeah, so what a great question. Let me start with giving another resistance that we've seen, and then I'll go back to your question. Sometimes communities resist because they're not sure who you are. Now, I don't, you know, look, I'm a guy from New York, originally from America. So, you know, with all the programs that I work with, I'm not the one who goes into communities. You know, we have our local partners are the ones that are doing it. And that's actually why it's great when we work with universities and students and law teachers and lawyers, because they're from, you know, they're from these, you know, often from at least the area. But sometimes communities are mistrustful, right? They don't trust the people. So it isn't that they don't want it, they just don't trust who's coming in. And therefore they say, look, we don't want to participate. We've had that when when students have tried to give the legal legal needs survey, some people don't want to answer because they don't know who you are and they don't know where the information's going. So we have found that to be the case, that sometimes communities resist because they don't trust. And the best way to get around that is to, you work with them, you don't force yourself on them, and you help to build the trust. But for the most part, communities are pretty open to it when they see the benefit. Having actually had a community say, we absolutely don't need you, go away, it's never been phrased like that. It's more phrased like, we're not sure who you are. It may be that they don't feel that they need you and they're saying, oh, well, we don't know, but in my experience, I have not seen communities absolutely say, no, we don't need, everything is perfect. Because I've never found a community in anywhere where they feel everything is perfect. So no, I haven't come across that. I'm sure some communities have said it to some, but I would question the motive of the community. And are they really feeling everything is perfect, or are they just saying that because maybe they don't trust those that are looking to work with the community because maybe they had bad experiences in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Lasky. We have one question in the chat box from Ibu Cipta Indra Lestari Rahman. I'm Cipta. I have one question. Have you found differences in the models of community empowerment in several cases you have linked?
Yeah, yes. So there are, there are different models, and often the level and the difference in the models is often the engagement with the community. Some communities need, very little assistance, and maybe they just need information to basic resources. And other communities, they want much more direct engagement. And I'm not talking about communities from different countries. You may have a community next door to another community, in the same country, in the same township, or same province. So there are different models that work with different communities all the time. And again, this gets back to the idea of trying to do assessments of needs, and the needs of the community, and also the opportunities that the community have, the resources of the community. Some communities are much more resource rich, and they need a different type of model. So there really isn't, exactly the same model everywhere. It's gonna change. With it said, you can look at a model that you've done working with one community, and with slight adjustment, it often will work with another community. So it's important to not just think, oh, I must create a brand new model for every community. You look at what models have worked. You understand the models need to be flexible. Many of them are similar, and many of them may be much more different. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lasky. Anyone else want to ask Mr. Lasky questions? Mr. Lasky, we will end this discussion at 4:30. Yeah, so we have 13 minutes more.
I think
For the
Ali
audience
wrote
to
his hand.
ask.
Yeah, Ali raised his hand. He's the man with the
Okay.
questions. It's all good. Yeah,
Thank you,
that's all
sir.
good. Thank you.
I want to ask you, have you ever experienced an incident where the client has chosen an option and end up badly, and the client blame you for his own choice?
I laugh because sure. Sure. Yes. I was in the United States. I'm a legal aid lawyer for many years. And there are many people that they don't do what you suggest, and maybe they get more time, and then they, and then they say, well, it's your fault, or, I was told, oh, well, I heard that, if I get more time in prison, you get more money. And I was like, I would be very rich if that was the case, so yes. And sometimes people blame others. A lot of these people, look, you're going to get blamed. If things go wrong, you're often going to get blamed. And you shouldn't really get angry or overly upset, because sometimes these people, they're hurting, they're in need, they had bad things happen to them, and you're the closest person to them. And so they're gonna get angry with you. And that's just, and it's okay, because, many of these people, from the time they were born, life has not been fair to them. And you're just one more person who's come into their life, and bad things have happened, and you do your best. But it doesn't always work out. Sometimes they don't have good options. And sometimes when you give them their options, they only have bad options. They only have bad options. So you're trying to say to them, look, you have, in my opinion, you have 5 options. All of them are bad. All of them are bad. But I'm going to make a suggestion on what I think is the least bad of your 5 options. And they may get angry and they may blame you, but you can't take it personally. And understand that, in many ways, some of these, like, as I said before, some of these people, from the time they're born, they have bad options. And that's unfortunate. That's often because they're born into poverty. They're born into, they're the wrong ethnicity. They may be the wrong, nationally, the wrong culture. They're born sometimes with bad options, and it's unfortunate. I remember I used to work with juvenile clients under 18, right, and that were charged with crimes. And I was asked by a 9-year-old who was being charged with something, and the client was my client, asked me how many times I'd been to prison, and I said, I've never been to prison. And the client wouldn't believe it, because every male my age in that child's community had been to prison. And so the child couldn't think about meeting someone my age, I was in my 30s, who'd never been to prison. It was like in a different universe. And all I thought about is, oh my God, how thankful I am that, I was not born into that society. But at the same time, it also made me aware that, I had a lot of learning to do, because that's that child's universe, that every male that child met had been to prison. And why? Not because they're necessarily bad people, but that's the community, that's the law enforcement, that's the focus, and it didn't mean every male in that child's community was a criminal and a bad person, not in my belief. But so a lot of this is, you're going to get blamed. You may work with communities, things may not go right. You got to do your best, and understand in the end, you can't make everything perfect.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay.
I think we have something in the chat.
Audience?
In the chat.
Yes. Okay, I will read for you. This is from Mr. Harris. Okay, Mr. Harris. Okay, he wants to ask about this. Okay, regarding the empowerment of Asian migrant workers in the pre-departure stage. there are always cases of abuses of the procedures of recruitment and sending of the Indonesian migrant workers abroad by irresponsible individuals all across the country. What sort of strategies do you think can be employed in the Indonesian cases?
Yeah. Okay. So that's great. And thank you. And, we definitely recognize this from Indonesia. And unfortunately, this is not only Indonesia, right? But definitely empowerment issues where communities are empowered. We talked about community-based paralegals and others, persons in community that make people aware of the legal necessities before workers go abroad. So communities, the awareness in communities is raised by the community themselves. There's community outreach in the communities themselves, where key individuals in the communities make people aware of what they need to look out for. So you have to do this in your country of departure, like Indonesia. Same, equally so in the countries of destination. It's important to identify allies in the countries of destination that will also work with these migrant workers when they get there. And you give these migrant workers points of contact in the countries of destination, the countries they're being sent to. So if they do have these problems when they get to these countries, they have allies already there that they can contact. There's a lot of other strategies. But these are definitely some of the strategies that, they when I say work, they are successful, but they're not successful all the time. And unfortunately, there are some bad people. There are some bad people, absolutely, especially in the area of immigration and employment and working with migrant workers, both in the countries of origin. So there are bad people in Indonesia that have bad ethics, and then there are bad people in the countries where the workers are going to. At the same time, we also recognize that migrant workers have good experiences. Many of them go to these countries and they go and they do amazing work. I see Indonesians and others around the world doing amazing work, and they're able to then make money. They make their lives better. They're able to send money back to their families and help to empower their families. So what we should not say is we don't believe in migrant workers. It's bad. We're not going to allow migrant workers, because that's not a real solution. There is a real positive aspect to these migrant worker programs globally. But it really is about the warning signs, what to look for before people leave, and also when they go to where they're going, they're given points of contact that they can rely on if in fact they absolutely need that assistance. So a few examples. I hope that was helpful.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lasky. One more questions, maybe? Before we end this discussion, because today's PIC already signaled me with this time arrangement that we need to finish this visiting lecture at 4:30. Unfortunately, Mr. Lasky, even though it's a very enchanting discussion. Anyone out there?
No, thanks. And actually, I was just trying to think of, going back to the migrant worker question. I was just trying to think of the country that, recently they weren't able to get visas to some countries, and I can't. If they are migrant workers, they're just not issuing them, and that was like the host country's remedy. It's like, well, we're not gonna let people out. And I was like, that's just not an answer. That it's just not an answer to, say, well, because there's a problem, we're just not going to let any migrant workers out to do this because, there's a reason. My family, I'm from America, but my family, they're not originally from the United States. They came from other countries for better work, and these programs do work. These programs do work. At the same time, countries like Indonesia have really economically have advanced so much. in the last 20 years. And, people don't necessarily want to work overseas. If they have a choice, great, but they want to have that choice. But, for some people, they don't have that choice. The opportunities are not there. So I'm not an advocate of just saying, well, the way to handle this is just not letting migrant workers out of your own country to go do this stuff. I just don't think that's feasible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lasky. I'm gonna give a chance to one questions, maybe one more before we close this discussion. Alif? No? No. Okay, thank you, Alif.
And I just want to say also, thanks, for you doing these seminar series. I think they're really important. I was really honored by you asking me. As I wrote in, I said, look, I'm quite busy, especially right now. I'm doing all this work traveling. But these type of series really are good to kind of bring in different thoughts and ideas. It's great that we're able to do it virtually. I know some people don't like the virtual method, but it does allow us to connect in more. And I think continuing to do this more and more and engagement. It doesn't have to be with a lot of people. It can just be with a few. That's fine. That's fine. If you reach just a few people and you have a dialogue, that's great. So I really want to say thanks again. I was very honored to be asked to be able to participate.
The honor is ours, sir. Okay. Okay. Since there are no more questions, okay, I'm gonna end this once again. Thank you, Mr. Lasky. And we are very honored to have you here. And what I underline from this discussion is we as students, as a part of our community, needs to engage in empowering the community by raising legal awareness. Because when we talk about access to justice, we need to highlight that they need, the community needs their voice to be heard. The community needs to have the rights to exercise their rights, so the students can involve in greater aspects by doing this legal awareness program. And what I underline in this discussion is, Mr. Lasky, you said that CLA is like a buffet of food. So it could be a teaching method. It could be a part of academic program. And by you saying this, I can assure you that Law Faculty of Universitas Pancasila is going to the right direction with its CLE. Once again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Lasky. We are hoping for the forthcoming works together. Good afternoon, everybody. Stay healthy, stay happy.
Thank you, everybody, very much. And yes, I would like to come to Indonesia again and again and again to be able to do that. So I will, as we're now able to travel more. I'm about to go to the Philippines at the end of this month, and also over to Thailand again. So yes, and I'm in Vietnam now.
We'll surely be waiting for you, sir.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Mr. Lasky.